Okay, hello everyone. Now we are now going to Vietnam. Okay, and the focus for this lecture is to show another case study of a SCA country, right, that's not gone through phase one. Okay, so this means that from the very beginning, the government was never democratic. Okay, so it went straight to a maximum government, which is phase two. Okay, and surprise, surprise, North Vietnam and later on Vietnam unified, right? It is a very relevant positive example, okay, of a communist maximum government. Okay, so therefore, yeah, the much feared, communist government that you have learned so much about your paper one, all right, has brought about political stability, okay, in Vietnam. Okay, so let's find out how they have managed to do so, okay, using the three criterion. Okay, to assess the effectiveness of Vietnam as a maximum government, again, we'll be using these three criterion. With regards to centrifugal threats, right, they are not very relevant in a sense, okay, because remember they were busy fighting a civil war, right? So busy fighting US supported South Vietnam. Okay, so therefore they're actually doing something that is even greater than a centrifugal threat. And the North Vietnamese communist government, okay, it was actually a highly successful one, right? The fact that they were able to defeat US-backed South Vietnamese army. Okay, and so therefore, their achievement is much greater than any other SCA country, okay, in this ability to suppress centrifugal threats because they managed to suppress an imperial power or superpower. All right. So therefore, yeah, considered positive, too positive already. Okay. With regards to the second criterion, all right, it's also a positive case study because even though North Vietnam was communist, right, you will find that they also have like the constitutional trappings, okay, like a constitution, all right. They also hold elections. They also have a national assembly. Okay, so therefore this means that they also tried to use democratic forms and practices to for them to like affirm their legitimacy. Okay, and it's also a way for them to maintain stability. All right. Another very interesting way of governance in North Vietnam, right, would be the idea of collective leadership. Okay, and therefore, as a result, right, we have actually witnessed peaceful transfer of power, okay, from one generation to the next. So there was also like military coup or like one faction overthrow another faction kind of thing. So everything is actually very stable. Okay, and the with regards to criterion three, the Vietnamese government, okay, the Vietnam Unified Government was initially not very successful. Okay, they only experienced success after they have adapted capitalist-like reforms. Okay, in regards to Doi Moi, okay, in 1986. All right, so let's start from the very beginning. Okay, so yes, they were independent, okay, after the First Vietnam War, after they have gained independence from the French. All right, remember. Okay, however, the result was that there were two Vietnams, and I think it's something similar to what we have learned in your paper one. Okay, so therefore, with regards to the Vietnam War, I'm not going to like tell the story because you actually know the story better than me. Okay, but just bear in mind that we are only interested in Vietnam as a communist government, all right? So I'm not interested in the No Dinh Diem, corrupt and repressive government kind of thing. We already learned about them, remember, in topic 2. Okay, so therefore over here, I'm just interested in North Vietnam. And later on, after 1976, right, Vietnam unified under North Vietnam. Alright, so in the early years, the only thing that is relevant for our purpose, right, would be the fact that there is actually a change in political party. Okay, the ruling party, okay, that ruled North Vietnam from the Indo-Chinese Communist Party, okay, to later on in 1951 the Lao Tong Party or the Vietnam Workers Party. It's literally called the Lao Tong Party. Okay, I wasn't the one to like invent the honey pinyin, alright, for this. Okay, the reason why Ho Chi Minh did away with the original name into Chinese Communist Party, okay, was because he wanted to portray his party as a broad-based one. So he didn't, and also he didn't want to like expose the party for what it really was, which is Communist Party. So he wanted to portray itself as a broad-based organization, and therefore attract people that are more than communists. Okay, and yeah, and also like reduce Western suspicions okay, of this party. Alright, so then after that, however, in 1951, there was the creation. So he still, nonetheless, alright, he still created this Vietnam Workers Party, okay, during the period of the first Vietnam War, right? And then after that, that again we see the importance of this Communist Party in the government of North Vietnam. Alright, because you will see that several key members of the Communist Party, right, okay, Lao Tong Party, okay, also doubled as important leaders of the North Vietnamese government. Okay, so it's, in a way, it's something that's very common in like communist countries, like let's say China, for example. Okay, so therefore, is almost like interchangeable. All right, the position in the party, in the Communist Party, all right, it would be the equivalent in the government. Okay, so this means that party and national politics, okay, they are kind of like interchangeable, almost synonymous. All right, so therefore, it's the creation of a party state because they are kind of the same. All right, party state, that kind of thing. So that's why this is a way for them to maintain stability. It is criterion. All right, so other trappings, okay, other ways in which they tried to use criterion 2 to maintain stability, okay, would be they had a constitution, okay. Then after that, then this constitution actually paved the way for Communist Party, okay, to legitimize the Communist Party, Communist Party's rule over Vietnam, right? And then they also have provisions for various leaders, okay, a president, advised by a council of ministers, okay, and Ho Chi Minh very wisely practiced collective leadership. So he didn't have any like illusions of grandeur. He didn't like, actively cultivate this personality cult lah. So no matter what, he actually prefers to be in the sidelines. All right, he would listen to the advice of his fellow ministers. Okay. And there's also another so-called political structure called an elected National Assembly. So I call it elected, right, was because the National Assembly members was made up of people who have been elected, all right, but it was only held once, okay, and then in the end, this National Assembly was also like became like a rubber stamp, okay, so therefore it in the end didn't really wield much influence, right, but at least they still have this structure lah, okay, in place called the National Assembly. Okay, and then the Communist Party definitely, as I said earlier, all right, the important members of the Communist Party also became important members of the government. Okay, so therefore, North Vietnam emerged as a totalitarian political structure with a dominant president, very disciplined Communist Party, and a very aggressive army. Okay, that followed the rule, the dictates, all right, the instructions of the Communist Party. Okay, well, yeah, in a way, it can be considered, they follow some form of democracy. Okay, because definitely is a government form of the people for the people. All right, so therefore, as long as you become a communist, you join a Lao Tok party, okay, you are technically able to rise up the ranks. Right, but obviously it is still a maximum government because you must be part of the Communist Party first. All right, and there is no tolerance for any opposition at all. Okay, so there were still elections, all right, and then this idea about collective leadership. So I'm still looking at examples of criterion 2. Okay, so therefore after Ho Chi Minh's death, okay, so he was like so important, right? He's such a big in stature that after his death, right, there needs to be like 4 people, okay, to take over his position. So in a way, it was a collective leadership between 4 individuals. Okay, you see that one represents the Communist Party, one represents the National Assembly, all right, and then there's also the president himself, the prime minister himself, okay, and defense. So because at that point in time, he was still fighting a war with South Vietnam, right? So therefore, defense was very important. So you can see that this quadriumvirate, all right, made of 4 people, so a quad, okay, they all represent like the key components, all right, of what makes government work in North Vietnam. Okay, so therefore, yeah, looking at the Communist Party again, right? So earlier it was dissolved, but then it was refounded again as a Lao Tok Party. That's what I said earlier as well. All right, so therefore, this has resulted in North Vietnam becoming a party state, Okay, now let's look at the role of the army. Okay, according to Marxist theory, the army was a handmaiden of the party. I always like this phrase. Sounds very literature-like. Okay, however, and therefore definitely the army, right, was subordinated to the party, okay, or the party state. Okay, so these are the ways in which the army became subordinated to the party state. Okay, so how come? Okay, why was the army subordinated to the party state? Well, the army actually needed the party as well, all right, because they needed a party to recruit members, okay, more and more members for the army, obviously, and also for like labor, all right, because they needed the more manpower, okay, for labor, for military welfare groups and all that, all right. They also needed a party to drum up support, okay, popular support for the army through the propaganda apparatus. Okay, so the fact that the army itself, all right, agreed to the division of Vietnam along the 17th parallel, okay, during the Geneva Conference, it suggested that they themselves were not able to overturn the forces, okay, of, like, for example, the government as well. So therefore they are not the dominant voice, all right, in like political negotiation. Okay, so therefore from the very beginning, right, the Vietnamese army was not the dominant political force. So if I add on Vietnam, all right, to the slide that I've actually earlier shown in the Singapore case study, right, Vietnam will be part of military or subordinated force. Okay, so this is an example of a propaganda poster, all right, to actually uplift the status of the military, and this is done by the party. Okay, this is to do with criterion 3. All right, so this talk about like some of the economic policies that the Communist Party has come up with in an attempt for them to maintain stability. Okay, so at first they wanted to like take a very firm approach, okay, with regards to reunifying the North and the South, okay, together, right? And one way in which they wanted to do so was through the economic policy of collectivization, right? So therefore they wanted to collectivize agriculture. Okay, a collectivization refers to like, agriculture would be under control, state control. All right, everybody will be organized into communes, and you work in the fields. You fulfill certain quota, and you do not, gain any of the crops. Okay, to sell, you cannot sell in the market. You cannot use it for profit. So all that you sell, all right, would be towards the national or towards the party or towards the government. Okay, so there must be state control. Okay, but however, did this economic plan bring about stability? Actually, not really. Okay, because they didn't really manage to collectivize all of South Vietnam. There were a lot of like resistance from the South Vietnamese farmers, okay, who were used to be very independent farmers on their own already. So and obviously they didn't want to be like unified, right? Okay, so therefore there were a lot of resistance, and actually there were even like famine, okay, in the 1980s, late 1980s. You learn more about this next year. Okay, so I keep saying that next year and stuff, right? So don't worry, you will definitely learn about them, right? In the economic development topic. Okay, and so it's like it's actually a failure. Okay, the initial economic plans, right? And we also have this phenomenon, a major humanitarian crisis actually at a point in time called the Vietnamese boat people, because we see a lot of Vietnam from Vietnamese from South Vietnam. Okay, a lot of them are actually like maybe like ethnic Chinese, right? And the capitalists, so called like the rich, okay, they fled the country because they didn't want to be ruled by the communists. Okay, the Vietnam Cambodia war I can just read through. Okay, it's actually not really that relevant. It's really just for understanding, and we'll be learning all about this. All right, in a J2 source-based topic. Okay, it's actually a very popular source-based question. All right, so going back to the criterion 3. Okay, so earlier on we looked at the initial failure of collectivization, right? However, attempts for them to promote stability through criterion 3, right, would eventually be successful. Okay, eventually successful. Okay, through this thing called Doi Moi. Okay, so basically, this Doi Moi, right, is the equivalent of like opening up, okay, in terms of economic development. All right, of what you have observed in China, okay, and even in Soviet Union or in Europe, okay, that will be more under communist control. Alright, so basically is the idea about adopting capitalist reforms. Okay, however, you are still remaining communist, but in the economy you will adopt like more free market policies. Okay, so this one was in 1986. Okay, it was very successful. Okay, you learn more examples, okay, more statistics, a lot more statistics that you have like, okay, for this next topic. Okay, but I think for now, all right, suffice it to say that you just write all this, right, is enough already. Okay, so basically Vietnam turned, all right, from a country ravaged by famine, right, meaning they can't even produce enough rice to feed themselves. Therefore there was like nationwide famine in the late 1980s, right, to becoming the world's second largest rice exporter after Thailand. Okay, from 1986 onwards. Okay, and so you can see that actually they just basically did a complete reversal. All right, and then they also sustained a growth rate of around 7%. Okay, and so it became one of like one of the emerging economies, especially in Southeast Asia. Okay, and at that point in time, because Vietnam embarked on the route to open up, right? So therefore, they also did other stuff, like for example, applied to join ASEAN. Okay, and it became part of ASEAN in 1995. Okay, and I'm at the end of my case study. Okay, so again, this is a recap slide, right? So Vietnam is really a very short and sweet case study. It's all meant to be positive, okay, ironically, right? And basically, if you want, right, students like to use it to show that like even a communist government, right, can be a positive example of a maximum government. Okay, so therefore you have like so-called like 3 positive examples of maximum government lah. Okay, you have Suharto, Indonesia, which is a military government. You have Singapore, okay, which will be a controlled democracy, and you have Vietnam, okay, which would be like a communist country. Okay, all of them, they have been very positive in maintaining political stability, okay, via the 3 criterion. All right. So therefore, yes, end of this lecture, and we are now going to the last case study, which is Thailand, which will be next week.